All right. So I'm going to be talking about animating content changes in Compose. So how many of you have used Compose on a regular basis or tried it? Yes? How many of you have tried animations in Compose? Yes, quite a few, yeah. So I'm not going to be rediscovering animation today. I'm also not going to be telling you how to do something really fancy. This is going to be really small changes that can improve the quality of your UI. Just really tiny animation changes that can make it look graceful. Things like list to detail or dialogues, things like drawer animations, very small changes that will make it look really good. So let's get a start on it. Let me tell you a little bit about myself first. I'm Kinnera. I work in Frankfurt at a company called IOKI. It's a mobility service, so we provide passengers and driver apps to local transport providers. And we release about 80 apps every sprint, which is a lot. But we do use Compose for the most part, and we're trying to improve how it looks to the users. All right, so how did this idea come up? I was working on some bottom sheet animations, and I thought, it would look so much nicer if the user would not see that really jolty change where it goes from a small size to a really big size, and it would look so nice if it went really gracefully. And I actually made a PowerPoint presentation first, and then at 2 a.m. I was like, oh, it would be so cool if I wrote this in Compose for Compose. So this is desktop Compose, by the way. So a lot of the animations you see, which is this, is also in Compose. I will also be talking about this. All right. Thank you. I should think more at 2 a.m., right? Yeah. OK. So what will we be talking about today? I think of animations on Compose, content for the most part, in 4 different ways. 1, we have list to detail. 2, we have drawers, our navigation drawers, our bottom sheets, things like that. Number 3 is dialogues. And number 4 is just content changes, size changes, things that just show up on the screen at some point. OK, so let me start with content to content, because that's the one we use the most. So we have content 1, and we have content 2, and we want this to change really, really nicely, right? So you can see that nice little fade animation, and we want to do this easily. So let's see how we can do this. We have our content 1, which is just text, right? And we have our content 2, which is also just text. And we want this to be animated. The really easy way to do this is, if you're already doing this, you know that we have a mutable state. We are going to memo it by using remember, and we are going to toggle this Boolean. So we have, if this is happening, if it's expanded, we're going to show the expanded text. Otherwise, we're going to show content 1. How do we improve this? All you have to do is add crossfade. And using this, it doesn't do much. All you have to provide it is a target state. We say expanded, for example, and then use this target state, because Compose needs to know which exact state it's using for animating it. So we're going to provide it what is incoming and what is outgoing. So we're going to use this target state, and with this one line, we're having a nice little crossfade animation. So this is simple. What if we had to do something like this, which is a nicelessly expand and contract animation? There's an even easier way to do this by using animate content size. What do we do with animate content size? All you have to do is add it to your modifier and use that memoized expanded state to let it expand and contract. So simple so far, right? This is for content. What else can we do with it? I'll let you choose. List detail or drawers? Anybody? OK, list detail it is. We have our list, right? And then we want to show a detail. How do we usually do this? Let's go ahead and take a look. OK. So we have our list, which is a lazy column, and we have all of our items inside of it, right? And then we have our detail item, which is basically, it can be whatever you want it to be. And for this, currently, what you would usually do is, again, we have a memoized selected ID. And we're going to add it to the list. We're going to say, if selected is null or selected is not equal to index, we're not going to show it. And then we're going to add our detail the same way. So we're not going to change the logic when we add the animation. We're only going to tell it that we're going to show only this particular list item and this detail. right? So how do we change this? We're going to add, am I looking at the right thing? Yes. OK. So we're going to add something called animated visibility. This animates the visibility and disappearance of every item. So we're going to use the same logic that we already had, but instead of an if statement, we're going to add animated visibility. This is going to improve the quality of your list detail animation. I can show you how this works. So this, the first one, this was without the animation. So all it does is go back and forth, and it's pretty, it works well, but it's pretty jerky. So with our animated visibility, we see it nicely slide up. You don't really need to do much. You can always improve on it if you want to, but you don't need to, right? All right, so this was list detail. Next, we're going to talk about navigation drawers. OK. So when we talk about navigation drawers, we're talking about something that's not just appearing and disappearing, but we want it to come in from a certain direction. We want a certain kind of slide in or slide out happening with it. You can use animated visibility, but it's not exactly the greatest intuitive user experience, right? You want it to happen a certain way, but you also want to do it simply, because that's why you're here. So how do we do this? Let's go ahead and check it out. OK. All right. So here, what we're going to use is called animated content. We use animated content when we don't just want to do appearance and disappearance, but we want to animate how the content itself changes. In this case, let me just go ahead and tell you that we need to provide this animation a content transform. What is the content transform? We need to provide an enter animation for our final content to come into the screen, and an exit transform for what is on the screen to exit the screen, right? So that's what I'm going to do into here. We have something called slide into container. This already exists, and so you can use it right away. All you have to provide is the time it takes. And if you want to do something fancy, you can always do that. But here in this case, I'm going to let it slide into the container from the end and then slide out from the start. This is giving us that navigation animation that we're used to, that a user is used to, and is more intuitive. You can also use something called a size transform. What this allows you to do is it allows you to customize how this size changes. So you're animating how the size changes. You don't need to do it in this case even without it. It works the exact same way. Because in this case, we're not really clipping the size. We're allowing it to grow as it does and contract as it does. All right, so this was navigation drawer on device. But what about this little bottom sheet animation? It's really nice, right? And you want it to be able to drag up, but you don't really want to implement draggable, because we all know how that goes. So what is an easy way to do this? We already all have bottom sheets in our apps, for the most part, I would think. How many of you have bottom sheets in apps? Yes? How many of them are custom? Yes? What do you use for bottom sheets? In views? Yes? Anybody? No? Motion layout? Custom, slightly custom, right? Yes. OK. So in Compose, we have something called, we have two different things. We have model bottom sheet, and we have bottom sheet scaffold, right? Modern bottom sheet is great if you're disappearing and reappearing a bottom sheet. But if you use something like bottom sheet scaffold, this is done for you, draggable, right? Simple enough to do. All you have to do is put your content inside of this bottom sheet scaffold. And you have instances like is expanded, collapsed, current value. You can also expand and collapse functions that you can use to expand and collapse depending on any other click functions you might have in that particular composable. So this is definitely something that you can try out if you're starting off with bottom sheets. Refactoring, of course, is a bit of a struggle, but once it happens, I think it's much easier to do. This is something we've tried, and it works out pretty OK, I think. All right, so I'm not going to talk more about this because it's a lot to talk about, but feel free to come and talk to me after the talk about this. OK, so now we've talked about drawers, bottom sheets. We've done list detail. And now I'm going to talk about how we've done this slide animation. If you want something to go into the corner, something like this, it's easy to do. So how do we do this? Again, as I talked about, enter and exit animations. So there are 4 types of these. That's something you should keep in mind. Fade, which is the most popular one, and that we should use because it makes sure that your content just doesn't just jump out at you. It's not as good as user experience. We have scale in and scale out. Not really an Android thing, but maybe you have a use case, something where a card pops up. We also have scale, slide, fade, and expand or shrink. So these are the 4 basic ones that you can do. You can do them together. So you can use these pluses to involve multiple animations at the same time. So you can say fade in, scale in, shrink, and all of them will happen at the same time. You can also use delay if you want, and this is a lot of customization that you might not need to do if you're already using the basic things. But you can do them, right? In this case, for example, when I'm going into the menu screen, I say I want it to go towards the top end. So this is the end of X and the top of Y, which is why, let me show you. OK. So when I do this, no, that animation should have completed. OK, let's go. Yeah. So we wanted to go into the corner, so that's how I did it. We can always customize this, but again, I would recommend sticking to the basics if you're not a big fan of animation and just want it to work with a nice, graceful change. We've done all of these. Now to my favorite one, which is dialogues. I was looking into dialogues when I was going to talk about animation, and I was trying a bunch of different things. And a lot of things didn't really work. And I was looking into why this happens for dialogues, right? We have a lot of dialogues where it just shows up. We all use a lot of dialogues in Android apps, but we can make this better, right? I mean, in my opinion, we shouldn't really do this for alert dialogues. They're meant to show up at you. They're meant to be emergency. They're supposed to be in your face. But for normal dialogues, where you're just asking a user to agree to something or something of the sort, you can always use a nice little animation. So how do we do this? Let's look at dialogues. OK. So when you do a dialogue animation, what do? I think for most of animation states where you show or hide things, we memo the mutable state, right? Here we have a show dialog. It's set to false. When I click on a button, it's set to true, right? This works, right? It works perfectly fine. What I want to do is want it to sort of scale out at me when I want a dialog to show. How do I do this? So let's go and look at the dialog item. In this case, the button animation sets this animation to true, and this doesn't work. Can anyone tell me why? There's a dialog. I have animated visibility because that's what I want to do, right? I'm going to do a scale out here, and it does not scale out. It just shows up at me. Anybody know why? Yes? No? This is because the dialog itself takes time to build. So that build time that's there, it takes about, I tested quite a bit, but I think 300 milliseconds is the sweet spot. That's where it stops building and actually shows it. So if you have, the usual animation time is less than 300 milliseconds. So by the time the dialog is built and shown, the animation is already over. So we want the animation to happen after the dialog is built. So we can do something like, let's see, where did that go? OK. We're going to do something like this. We're going to delay it by 300 milliseconds and then set the animation to true. So we have 2 memoized things now. We have one memo in the dialog itself, and it says, I want to show it now. And then the dialog item itself says, OK, I want to show it. I'm going to let it build, and then I'm going to start the animation for you. So this is great. We have the animation shown. Now, when it disappears, the same thing happens. When it disappears, it just disappears on you. So how do we change this? Anybody? I've given you a clue. I mean, we need a delay, but how do we do this? Yes? Sorry? Can you speak up a little louder? Yes. So in the close request, on dismiss, if we directly called on dismiss, then there is no dialog there anymore for the animation to happen, right? So we're going to give it a delay again. We're going to set the animation to false, which will start the animation. And then we're going to give it the same amount of time as the animation for it to kind of disappear. And then we call on dismiss, which will close the composable itself. So This is really interesting. This is my favorite part of this talk because I looked up so much, and there's a really great talk by Katie Barnett. She spoke at GDG Melbourne, I think, and she really talks a lot about this. So I would recommend you check it out if you get the time. So this was dialogues. And let's do a little summary, and I can tell you what else we can do. So list detail, we did animated visibility. You just have to show and hide your list items and your details, and this animates it for you. Then we talked about drawers and cards and bottom sheets. You can use animated content with all kinds of enter and exit animations as you like, and this should show it for you. Then we had dialogues and notifications. So we can use animated visibility within a dialogue with a delay and a coroutine because you need a delay, and this will do it for you. You can also do this for notifications, really. You can use slide in and slide out of container. It would work really well. That's also a really good use case if you're doing notifications in-house. Great idea. For content to content, I think if you don't want to try anything new and you really want to go with the basics, I would recommend cause fade. It will do a nice fade animation for you and slightly better than what you already had, and that's the best way to do it. OK, what else? I was going to say something. OK, in animate content size, one thing that I would definitely like to mention is that while expanding, what Compose does is that it gives a maximum height, right? And then it's slowly animating into the maximum height. So it already has that space reserved for that particular composable. But when it's compressing, the maximum height that the animation provides it is higher than whatever is the height of the contracted composable, right? So you have to be really careful with using it. Make sure your parent composables are large enough to handle it, and just be careful with where you're placing animate content size in your modifier. So I think that is everything I wanted to say about small content animations in Compose. And yeah, any questions? Thank you.